Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. We have a great group. Very excited today.
Oh, someone says the chat is disabled, so they'll have to just chat on
the
here.
Q&A. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which probably makes it easier. Then you don't have to navigate two things. Just
Sure.
that nobody else can see it, I think, if they're, well, that's a good question.
Right.
Know if everyone can see it.
I don't think so. Yes, it's disabled. Interesting. Okay. Well, we're going to use the Q&A, everyone, because that seems to be working. It's all good.
Hey, Lindsay, that's what I was thinking. You can only see
Yep.
your own questions, but
Yes.
that's okay.
So this is, I will say, across, usually we're doing virtual or the just virtual meetings, and because we have typically the interactive nature with video, but this is such a large session and more informational. And we just thought the webinar format would allow for a better format for everybody to hear this information and for us to record it. So we're excited to be able to offer a recording of Terry's presentation today. So we're going to get started and people will just jump in. So I'm going to introduce myself. If you don't know me, I'm Jamie Nadeau. I am the Executive Director of Across New Hampshire, and I'm excited to welcome Terry Peck today to our Director Circle to talk about what's new in NHCIS. And if you were here and hearing us, there are some really fun, exciting things that she has in store to share with us today. So as we just talked about, the Q&A is where we're going to have you enter your questions throughout the presentation. And then once Terry is finished with her presentation, she will open it up if you would like to raise your hand, and then we can unmute you. So yes, we're here today joined by Terry Peck, and she is the, she's at DHHS and the Bureau of Child Development and Head Start, and she's the business analyst there. And she's been doing lots of behind the scenes work on NHCIS. So thank you, Terry, for taking the time today to share this with us. So I'm going to pass it over to you.
All right, thanks. And so see a lot of familiar names. I've been with the Bureau a little over a year, and before that I was 15 years as a supervisor in licensing, and was doing some of this work as it related to licensing, but when I had the opportunity to do it all day, every day, I jumped on it. So hopefully we can get some people excited about what's happening and where we're going with NHCIS. It is a massive, massive system on the Salesforce platform. And so with anything and any change, there are always growing pains. So I'm going to share my screen here and start walking through some of the features that we have going on and some of the history behind this. Way back before COVID, we started talking about something in 2018, and it was that licensing needed a new way to track background record checks to meet FBI requirements. The NACRAware training system was going away. That platform was going away. The Bureau was looking for work for a project. We were looking for a project, and it was recognized by the project management office that we were serving all the same people. So that's when we started collaborating and pulling it all together. Part of the 2014 reauthorization as a CCDBG grant required basically a one-stop shop, especially for parents on looking for childcare, and posting all the information about visits and childcare programs and what they offer so that they can have a better way of finding what they need and meeting their needs. So we're really, everything we do ends up focusing on the families and the children, but the NHCIS, as directors use it, is mostly focused towards their programs and their staff and how they can develop those to meet needs of families. All right, so we're working towards having a single centralized system where we can gather and analyze all the information we need about childcare in the state. When COVID hit, we were asked a lot of questions that we couldn't answer. We are better able to answer a lot of those questions now, and we're constantly putting more things in place and getting better reporting capabilities so that we can respond to legislator and community requests for information and determine what the needs of the families and childcare community are. Our developer is MTX, and we started our system based off of something they had developed in Massachusetts, which is the childcare search, but have since added a lot to it. And they're, they market to other states who need to have similar type systems. And they just came out with this flyer the other day, and I thought it was a great way to show, how a company like a developer is marketing what they're able to provide to state childcare systems. A lot of the places where individual staff are going in and entering their name, their address, their date of birth, they know how to spell their name. They're probably not going to type in the wrong date of birth. When our staff were doing that and receiving paper applications, and maybe something wasn't all that legible or they mistyped, there's less room for error. And, many hands make light work. So, so one of the main things that started this whole project was our consumer website and childcare search page. That page has a lot of features, which I'm going to go through some things that we've added recently. But one of the important parts is the overview of a visit to a childcare program. So if you've been visited since probably July of last summer, you have probably responded to your visit statement of findings through NHCIS. But for parents, they can go on this website and they can see everything that was assessed, and if it was in compliance or not in compliance. So the report doesn't just say everything that was out of compliance, it says everything that was in compliance as well. There are some rules that are indicated with a red circle with an exclamation point. Those the federal government has determined are higher risks for health and safety. So each one of those rules, like you can see down here at the bottom, will show this red circle. And that's part of a requirement from the federal government. We're able to report on all the times that those have been cited. We can also pull reports in general of what rules are the most often out of compliance, so we can then focus our training and technical assistance to programs to help them be in compliance. And then they can write the corrective action plan. And there's a much quicker back and forth with the programs and the licensing coordinator to get acceptable corrective action plans. All of these were done in the mail before and given 3 weeks for responses. They're still given 3 weeks for responses, but they're immediately available to the licensing coordinator, to the director of the program, and then posted on our public website 21 business days after we've approved the licensing unit has approved the visit. So the other thing from our public website, you can see when you're looking at childcare search on the right-hand side, there's this panel of useful resources. And little known fact, you can download a provider list for all the providers. That includes license exempt facilities, license exempt family-based childcares, and license-based centers. So we get requests for that information a lot from all kinds of entities. So this is all public information, and it's one way for people to go and pull that information. And I think people are always glad when they know that it exists. So I like to make sure people know that that's available. So background record checks. That's a process I've been working on since it went into effect in 2009. Back when we first started getting fingerprint results, if somebody had hits on their background record check, especially from states other than New Hampshire, it could take months to get those results from the other states, investigate them, allow somebody with that criminal background to provide evidence that they're not a risk to work with children, as our law does allow for most things for them to show that they're not a risk to working with children. Certain criminal records are, you know, a non-starter, right? Murder, child pornography, things that are pretty obvious. But when COVID started and people said, how many people work in childcare? All we could say is, I don't know, probably 10,000, because we do 10,000 background record checks a year. But we knew that because of the requirements of the system that were voted on by the United States Congress in 2014, so we did not purposely make it complicated. A lot of programs were unsure when they hired a person if they were able to just take their eligibility from a previous background record check or not. So they just had people redo their background record checks. So the amount of checks that we're doing has dropped by more than 50% because of NHCIS, which has freed up our staff to be able to much more quickly review background record checks and determine eligibility, since individuals can't work in programs until they're deemed eligible. So in the last year, we've done 4,600 complete background record checks. The average turnaround time for people who have only lived in the state of New Hampshire for the last 5 years is 7 days. But I will say that does include people with criminal records. So that turnaround time for somebody who doesn't have a criminal record and submits their application and goes for their fingerprinting appointment can often be deemed eligible within the day that they get printed or a day or two afterwards. So this is really turned things around quickly. And then if they've got out of state background checks that we need to get results from, that average turnaround is 17 days. A lot of the states are much quicker at turning around their results to us, but some of them are still at 45 days. We haven't gotten results from them. And then at that point, we deem the person eligible. The other part, and it says September 1 to present, but I did this, this chart in March. So once we started doing visits in NHCIS, we're able to track how much more quickly we are able to get the results of a visit to a provider. And this is by the different types of visit types. So regular monitoring visit, 5 days, 5 to 6 days. License complaints, 9 days. Those go through a lot more rigorous checks and sometimes more investigation after a visit takes place. So those do take longer. A permit to full, you know, that first visit that people get 6 months after they become licensed. So you can see these turnaround times are much quicker. Our goal at licensing before this used to be to get visit information out within 3 weeks. So we've gone from 3 weeks to within the week of the visit. All right. So I want to walk you through some of the fun things that we've added and different things you can do in NHCIS. I'm doing this in a test environment with a fake program and a fake user. So this is what the screens look like if you're a director. If you're not a director and you don't work at a program, you may not see some of these tiles. So tiles like childcare profile, grant application, provider enrollment, and licensing are only available to people with elevated access. So center directors, site coordinators, site directors, site administrators. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to log in. Hopefully I've got the right. Yes. Good first step. All right. So the first thing, which is really great, this started yesterday, is when we started doing the market rate survey and asking people to update their childcare profile, we put into place that every 3 months as a director, you will be prompted to update your childcare profile. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes, but you will keep seeing this until you've made the updates. But let's start as a regular user. So as a community user, I've logged in, I've answered 4 key questions about my education, what kind of role I have. And then if you work in a program, you link yourself to a childcare program. And once you link yourself to the childcare when you register, you get the professional registry and credentialing and training tile. Once you link to a program, you get the background record check tile. Once you're approved as a director or an individual with an elevated role, you'll see the profile, childcare profile, provider enrollment, and the licensing tab and the grant application. So as the provider, or as an individual working, whether it's Jamie and I who don't work in programs or any of you who do work in programs, you can update your information here, which helps us provide details to entities that ask about what does the childcare workforce look like? Who's in your professional registry and what kind of roles and education do they have? That's very helpful for any kinds of policymakers. And we do get asked those questions a lot. So you can put your date of birth in, where you work, all this type of information. Then your employment, what type of employer, how much you work, what type of position, what ages you work with. And then your education. So here you can enter your education, whether if you have a completed degree, or I believe you can put your high school diploma and things in there, but also that some college work. We know that working in licensed programs, especially, or as you're working towards completing your degree, showing certain amounts of credits is important. So we have this area here where you can indicate credits that you've taken in business and administration, early childhood, or specific school age credits, and then upload your current transcript. Those don't have to be official transcripts, because that's a whole different thing that you need for credentialing. And once you open them, they're not official anymore. So the other part is the professional development. So when you go through validated trainings like this one from Across, they're all going to show up in this validated training list, right? This Cookie Monster user here just has this training, and it shows what the areas are, what type of training it was, all things that we report on and that our contractors report on, like Childcare Aware, Across, and PTAN. Let us know, what core knowledge areas have people obtained training in. And then there's self-reported training. So if you go to a conference that is outside of NHCIS trainings, you can upload that information here. This is something we're working on right now to enhance, that we'll have an enhancement in June. And I'll show you where you're going to be able to get more information on that as it gets rolled out. Hopefully June 4th. We're going to have internal staff validate the trainings. And once they validate them, they will go over to the validated training list. So they'll populate onto your transcript for purposes of licensing and credentialing. So nobody will have to look at it. Boost, for example, is an organization that would automatically will have a drop-down list, like what training organization, and there's a list to choose from. And Boost is one of those, NAEYC, CARE courses, different organizations that we're familiar with. Once you enter that, there'll be some information where you can upload the certificate, maybe if it was a training, what the agenda was, who provided the training, if it's not a currently validated training organization. That is coming next, but right now you can just upload all this here. This also does populate into the credentialing applications. The next area is technical assistance. This is something we're going to be working on in the coming months, or if you've been received technical assistance from Child Care Aware or across, that will populate in here. I'm not very familiar with this part of the system because we haven't done any new development on it, but those hours do count towards your professional development requirements. Pediatric first aid and CPR. This is new and this is super cool. So we just added this on Monday, where you're able to go in and indicate when you took your pediatric first aid and CPR, when it expires, what organization you took it from, and then upload the certificates. So that way we can, validate the certificates with this information. You can delete what you had, if you're updating it and you go and do CPR again and it's after it expired, you can delete this document and upload a new document. And then any other credentials, your validated credentials from the department and any other credentials you might have, like say if you have a CDA or the high school certificate in early childhood, anything that you have maybe from a community college, you could upload those here as well. So that's all the parts that you can put in your professional registry. They do populate into your credentialing information. So if you want to apply for a credential, this has been up there for, I think, about a month, where you can go through the steps here to complete your credential. It is very important that you read the instructions and make sure you upload the requirements. We've had some people just kind of click through and submit, but there's nothing for anybody to review. So if you do start an application and you feel like, oh, shoot, that was the wrong one, you can just go in and delete it. But you can also look and see if something was successfully submitted, if it's under review, and anything that's been processed. So you can follow the steps of your application. And you can do your early childhood and your after school from here. And then you can always reach out to the credentialing specialist across and Child Care Aware for more information and help about any of the requirements. Okay. The next part is training. I won't spend too much time on this because everybody obviously has been in the training section to enroll in this training. But here are this is where you can look for trainings. You can get your list of completed trainings, your registered trainings. I think that's where you can get your transcript that you can download. However, new on Monday for those with elevated roles is a staff roster in here. Wow, what's that? This is super cool. So I can look at all my staff and I can see their trainings. So in the year of 2022, Abby Dabby Cadabby has 12 hours of professional development. But this year, or in last year, she only had 1. So I can see all my staff and I can see what their trainings are. One thing that we are adding to this that will come out in June, because I recognize, especially with after school site coordinators, you have multiple programs that you're dealing with. And unlike in the background record check area where you can choose which program you're looking at that you want to see a staff roster for, they were not able to make that happen here. So you'll be able to actually sort by program in one way or another. I haven't, waiting to see what that's going to look like. But there are some, especially site coordinators, that may have 15 programs listed under them. So instead of just being able to look at all the staff, you'd be able to look at each program and make sure that your staff are in compliance. You can export this report as well, and it will export it into an Excel document, and then you can do whatever you need to do with that. The other part of this staff roster dashboard, whoops, is, the credentials. Nope, wait a minute, wrong tab. Credentials awarded. I can look at all my staff and I can see what credentials they have. And after school and early childhood. So I think these ones must be the ones that are in progress. And you can export a report on that as well. The final thing is the CPR and first aid. So now I can look at all my staff and I can see and sort also by when do they expire for their CPR and first aid. So looks like Chandler Bing needs to get recertified in CPR. And so I can keep track of that. So that's new, just came out on Monday. The childcare profile, I'll look at that next. When we did the market rate survey, one of the things just in general, we've been hearing from a lot of people, and a lot of surveys were done in SurveyMonkey. So all the information from NHCIS isn't pulled into SurveyMonkey. So a lot of the questions for the market rate survey are not in the market rate survey section because they're in other areas. So there was a worksheet for the market rate survey and some steps and things that we wanted people to update that are really important for us to be able to determine what the rates and the cost of care are so that we can better align the childcare scholarship that low-income families receive to what the actual needs and the cost of care are. The hope is to go to a narrow cost analysis and find out exactly what does childcare actually cost in the state, and let's base our rates on that and not just what everybody's charging, because we know we're not charging the actual cost of care because families wouldn't be able to afford it. So when you're in your childcare profile, really what's important is to periodically go in here, and we're asking people to do this every 3 months, and update the information about your program, what your rates are, what your capacity is, how many open slots you have. Maybe you aren't accepting new enrollment, but you have a wait list. All of this information here in this first section does come up for parents and helps them make informed decisions, like, you know, if you have scholarships, or do you have transportation to and from maybe the school, or do you have the ability to take children with certain special needs, meals, do you provide them? Do you heat food? Do you only accept cold meals? And then there's the market rate survey, and market rate, narrow cost analysis, and workforce survey. All of that does not show up on the public profile. That's all confidential information, but does help us to determine where we're trying to figure out where the income, where the areas of highest need in the childcare deserts are throughout the state. And we're taking this data and we're combining it with census data to determine where we might need more spots. Where do we need more infant care? Where do we need more school age care? So all of that is in here, and there is a worksheet where you should be able to download that if you want, so that you can be, you know, writing it in whenever you have a chance, and then you can sit down and enter this all at once. But that's the childcare profile and how we use that information and how it informs families and helps them make decisions about childcare. Licensing, if and I don't know if there's any visits in here for this fake program or not, but your visit information will come up here if you've had a you know, your visit history for your program. Any non-compliances show up here. If you've had visits where everything was in compliance, it shows up on this tab. You can report serious accidents and injuries. This is a requirement from the reauthorization of the Child Development Block Grant. So there are certain injuries that are supposed to be reported to the department. this is where you would fill that out. If you're coming through and you're like, oh, well, none of these things happened to this child, you do not need to report that to the department. You do need to report those to the parents, but not the department. We're looking for accidents and injuries that did require treatment of some kind. So all of that's available here, and you can upload it from here. Or, you know, there is a paper form you can fill out, you can scan it, you can email it, you can fax it, you can call the office at Child Care Licensing and give them that information. There's multiple ways to do it, but you can do that here as well. You can also, if you're going to be off-site, especially in the summer, as programs start to go on field trips, or, you know, the fall, those like programs that may, or, you know, maybe it's school vacation week, but dates that you're not going to be on site, you can enter that information in here, and the licensing coordinators won't come out that day because nobody's going to be there, because that happens fairly regularly. Summer and fall seem to be the big times when licensing coordinators go out to visit programs and nobody's there because they're on a field trip. So that is all in there. Your ability to respond to your corrective action plan, all of that is available in the licensing tile. I'm just going to hop over to the background record check piece, which hopefully people are familiar with. We are constantly working on this and finding pain points. Certainly, if you have staff that are having trouble getting into here, they should do a support ticket. Our help desk is extremely helpful, and they're actually helping us with the back end code and determining what changes we can make to make this much easier to manage. So as the user who needs a background record check, I can go in and, you know, if I didn't really need an eligibility card replacement. I decided I wasn't going to change my name, so I don't need that application anymore. I can delete those from here. Now this site's acting weird. There we go. So I can also see what I've submitted. I can see if it's under review, and I can also see each of my things that have been approved and processed. Now, as a director, I can go into my staff roster, and I can look at the status of all the people who work for me. And if they're ineligible, I can also sort these by if they're ineligible, and I can sort them by BRC expiration date. So I can get a sense of who's coming up soon that need, you know, this one should actually say ineligible and it doesn't. But that's how this part works. You can see if somebody is requested to transfer to your program. If somebody was working at another program, they want to transfer their eligibility, you'll get an email to the program that says, hey, Teresa Peck wants to, has submitted a request to be added to your staff roster. You can then go in, you can look at all the details in there, and you can approve it. And now that person shows up on your staff roster, which you can, I don't know if it goes by first name or last name, but they show up over here somewhere. It might have to, sometimes you have to refresh the screen. And then anyone who's a pending hire, right? These pending means that their background record checks are pending. They may have submitted that. If they've submitted them, it should show submitted. So, although working under supervision, so yeah, if it's pending and working under supervision, that means we're still waiting for an out-of-state abuse and neglect to come back. So at 45 days, if we haven't heard from the other state, they can now work without being under supervision, or that application's under review. So a lot of things you can do here. It is a requirement in the licensing rules that if, as people leave, that you are end dating them, and then they come off of your roster. So you would hit that little arrow, edit that person, put their end date in, save it, and then they are no longer on your staff roster, which what you have to do is refresh, and then you'll see that they come off the staff roster. The other thing is that you can go in and update their role. So as people's roles change, and that's pretty important. We like to know, for example, how many people who have identified roles in working in school age versus working in center-based programs and different types of roles. So that's really helpful for our data collection. And grant applications, this came out Monday as well. If you have applied for the workforce grant, your information has been added. You won't be able to see it until it's been marked as under review. We've got one person doing all of that work right now, but I went in and marked this one as under review. Once that happens, I can see all the information that was provided for that application. Now, someone from the Bureau might say, oh, hey, you know what? I need some additional information. I need you to upload some documents. You go to the document repository, you click on the grant that they've asked you to add documentation to, you can upload a document, and instead of emailing it or mailing it through the United States Mail, we have it all in one place now, and it's much easier to find. So that's new as well. Also is provider enrollment. This is new, might be a little quirky right now. But if you are an enrolled provider to accept childcare scholarship, you'll start to get notifications when you're expiring, 30, 60, and 90 days before expiration. And then you can go in and do your application. All applications right now will say new application because they are new to NHCIS, but all the processes are in here. You can track the progress of your application. You would also be able to upload required documents if they are still needed, and the enrollment specialist would be in touch with you about that. So those are all of the pieces, kind of a quick walkthrough of some of the different things that are in NHCIS. I also want to show you, there is the user guide, and it's in multiple places on the New Hampshire Connections website. I know Across New Hampshire has it on their website as well. I've gone to the background record check page specifically to also show you that I did a new infographic of the steps, because one thing that we're finding is if you have a new staff and they're having a hard time getting into the system to start their application, there are things that they can do in advance, like making their appointment and getting fingerprinted. You don't have to have your NHCIS account and your application up and running yet. If you've lived in another state, it tells you all the steps for that. You can click on this and get a PDF version that you could print out. Obviously, if you print it out, it's not going to have the hyperlinks in it, but it's a good way to maybe present that to somebody who's trying to get started in the process, because that, some of that's updated. And then I want to show you the guide. This gets updated frequently. So it was updated on Friday to show some of the new pieces that are in here. Internet is kind of slow today. So one thing that we discovered, people didn't realize that this whole table of contents is clickable, which I'll show you in a minute. And at the bottom of the first page tells you when it was last updated. So it's always good to be going to the URL to see the most recent updates. But if I wanted to see about entering my information on CPR and first aid, I can just click on this. It will bring me right to that page with those instructions. And now I need to do something else. Boom, I can go back to the table of contents. So that's a quick and dirty about the user guide. And then some of the coming attractions. We are going to be doing more work on background record checks. One of the things that the state is not doing that they need to do is out-of-state criminal checks for certain states that people have lived in the last 5 years. And they're going to be streamlining on the back end some of the licensing visit tool pieces, but that won't so much impact the community users. And then we've got a lot of work that we're going to do on training and professional development once we get through those licensing requirements. We're also going to be in June, there'll be a way to submit your GSQ invoices. So if you're part of the GSQ program and you need to submit invoices every 3 months, we're automating that system and doing it in NHCIS. So in the end, we really want to have a comprehensive centralized system that collects, analyzes, and reports on the data for childcare needs in the state of New Hampshire. And that's, that's really what we're doing to help improve our decision making. Where does the money go? How can we support families? And then, yeah. So I'm just looking for what questions you have. I'm sure that there's been quite a few, and any thoughts and ideas, because I'm well open to, I know what I know, and I know what things I see and think need to happen, but we certainly would like some feedback from those community users who are using that end of the system.
Thank you, Terry. That was lots of awesome information. We
Yeah.
have a lot of questions in the chat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read each question first, and then I'll open it up also if you have a burning question and you want to ask it live instead of putting it in the chat, we'll open that up after I've gone through the questions in the Q&A. So this first one is from Marianne Butter. She had a couple of questions actually. She mentioned that uploading the trainings is very time consuming. Just mentioning, please consider going to a log system.
And I assume, so one of the reasons that we have to have people upload documentation is because we will be verifying the trainings. So, and it will clearly identify what types of documentation you'll need.
Okay. And then she had one other question as well. So I am going to ask Marianne. Oh, where'd she go? Right, Marianne. Oh, I'm jumping around here. Marianne. Okay, Marianne.
Hi, Terry. Thanks a lot for this presentation.
Sure.
It's really comprehensive and we appreciate that. So a couple different things. I was concerned about the amount of time it will take to upload all of this documents, especially if we're talking about after school staff. So it's not unlikely that an after school program can have, an extraordinary amount of employees. And although you would love to think that it would always follow the teacher to make sure it was uploaded, we all know the director is going to end up doing it. So I worry a lot about how time consuming that can be. A log system, although I understand what you're saying about verification, I also think it would be possible for it to be verified when the site is visited. So we already have a really comprehensive way of knowing at any second childcare licensing might show up, and they may look at those documents to make sure that your training is appropriate and completed. And that feels like the double check that would be needed rather than spending all of this person time, all of this, all of your time, frankly, verifying these documents, which seems sort of crazy. And just very time consuming for the Bureau also. And then I had a second question about how much of this is mandatory for providers and how much of it is just a very strong suggestion that would be helpful for data collection.
The only thing right now that's mandatory are all the components related to background record checks.
Thank you.
Because that is in rule. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary Ann. And we're going to jump to the next one. And Nicole from Southern District YMCA. Let's see. She said, is there any way to see the dates these trainings were completed by the staff?
Yes, I believe so. And that is an area that we're also working on because we recognize there are some issues with especially Pro Solutions and how those dates are populating as well. So that is something that we're working on. I know it does show some dates, but I think that there are some issues with the dates. So yes, but it might not be as robust right now as we hope it will be. The major parts of all this development are part of some ARPA money and some of it. But I think most of this work will be done at some point by mid-fall. So.
Okay, thank you. And Mary Ann, I'm gonna go back to her real quick. Mary Ann, did you have your hand up still from the previous question or?
Oh, yeah, I was just trying to
Your
identify
question.
myself so you could unmute me.
Oh,
Thank you.
sorry. Okay, sure.
It's all good.
Okay,
Terry answered my questions. Thank you so much.
perfect. Okay, thanks. All right, so the next question is from Emily Scarito. And that is, under the professional registry, the trainings are not in order and missing info when the teacher prints their profile. Will that be updated? The profile actually presents and prints different from a phone or computer.
Okay, that's good to know. And I know, I believe that you can sort it and then you can also indicate the date range that you want to put on your transcript. But this is helpful too. It's something that we are going to be focusing on when we're doing more work on the training and technical assistance end, because that has been a challenge. And also with Pro Solutions and how some of those online trainings aren't populating the dates correctly, that's been another issue. So in the works, yes.
Great. And the next question is from Debbie Lambert. Trainings I can see are only available to me if the staff input them, correct?
Trainings I can see are only available to me if the director can see only the validated trainings. And then other trainings that are just self-reported, I don't believe show up on that. They don't show up on that staff roster. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Okay, Debbie, if that does not answer the question, please feel free to raise your hand. We'll move on to the next question in the meantime. Nicole Fogarty from Southern District YMCA. Why can't we see upcoming BRC expirations?
You should be able to. You should be able to sort by BRC expiration and then have it go by newest to oldest or oldest to newest. So if you do the sort, so it's showing you what expires most recently. And also, if you look through the guide, it does let you know, and if you've personally been through this, there are a lot of email communications that do go to the person submitting their background record check with all the requirements and all the steps. And there are 30, 60, 90-day notification, or maybe, and 120. I think there's quite a few notifications reminding them when they need to renew also, as well as you, but because, ultimately you need to make sure everybody is eligible, but they are getting notification, and the ability to renew your background record check is available 4 months before expiration.
Great, thank you. And next is from Laura Elliott Johnson. I have a question regarding the provider enrollment tile. Will this be an area addressed today?
Yeah, so we did just open that up, and if you are not currently enrolled as a provider, you can certainly go in there and click on new application, and there's quite a bit of information. I would also recommend going through the Child Care Aware website on provider enrollment, because there's a lot of requirements and steps. If you're licensed, not as many as if you're license exempt provider. I'm not sure which you are. And you can do that now. And then if you're expiring, you should be able to also go in and do a renewal. But I think it still shows, like I said, it's still going to show up as a new application because all the applications are new in NHCIS because we just started them.
Right. Okay, and next up, Kelly Pickett has 2 questions for you. Hi, where can we find that infographic for new hires? Is the first one.
So that is on the New Hampshire Connections website. There's a tab on the top right about background record checks, and it's right there.
Great. And then second question is also in the future, is there a plan where we directors can see our staff transcripts?
That's a great idea. I mean, right now, you can get that whole list of all your staff and you can export it. So if there's something that you feel would be more helpful than that, I would love to hear about it. And maybe take some time to go in and now that that is available, look at it and see how it works for you and let me know any feedback you have for improvements. What might be more helpful. Yeah.
Right. Libby Brunette from Applewood Learning Center. Will it ever be possible for directors to enter their staff's PD or first aid CPR?
No. No, and we really don't want directors doing that. And I'll tell you, there's a couple things. One, it is their personal professional site for their everything's in there, other places they've worked and everything else is in there. So it's their information. The other thing that we do find is that when programs are logging multiple people into the same computer, which definitely is going to happen. But just so that you know, things can get a little wonky with cookies and caches from your system. So I highly recommend using incognito mode. And also in the guide, there is a section on how to clear your cache. If you start to see really weird things like my name's there, but training for somebody else is there, things can get really strange because you've been logging in under so many different users on the same system.
All right, next up is Christina. Are we able to download our statement of findings? I was told that feature was not ready yet.
Yes, it is there. It is there somewhere. And I know on the public side, but obviously those don't get posted right away. There's a tab, there's something at the very bottom that is the PDF version. And I believe within the licensing tile, when you're in there, I believe there's a document repository where that is in there, but I will double check and see if that is there or not. And then if not, make sure that that does get added soon, because obviously you all need to be able to post them. And if you are having trouble finding it, absolutely reach out to licensing, because they do PDF all of those. So they have them. So I will double check and make sure that's there. But if you're still having trouble finding it, check in with your licensing coordinator, and I'll also make sure that there's parts in the guide that address that.
Great, thank you, Terry. So
Yeah.
Kelly Pickett has another question. In the future, will we be able to upload BRC documents instead of mailing them?
The only documents that there aren't very many documents that need to be mailed right now. It's the eligibility card application, and quite frankly, you don't even need to mail that. You can just mail a check. Just make sure you say who it's for.
Right.
Because otherwise we don't know. But if there are requirements for things to be mailed and it has to do with out-of-state record checks, those do have to be mailed, because they're requirements of other states, and then we're submitting them to other states.
Holly Davis has a question. When you are in the staff roster and looking at their trainings, you are only seeing the validated trainings. Will you be able to see the self-reported at some point, or all self-reported trainings going to be validated and moved to that tab?
All self-reported trainings that can be validated would be validated and moved to that tab. Yes.
Right.
And, and that's part of it is, we have a new bureau chief, and she really feels that it is our responsibility to determine if trainings meet our federal and state requirements. And so she really wants to have a professional development office within the Bureau where we are the ones doing that and not childcare licensing. Also, you know, having worked in licensing for 15 years, you know, if you've got a large staff and licensing is there, they're there for a long time looking through paperwork. And they're wonderful people, but I know you don't want them there any longer than they have to be.
Yeah, exactly. So the next question is from Laura, referring back to the
That they are enrolled.
provider enrollment. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
great.
you'll be able to renew in that tile.
Okay, great. And then her next question, it does not allow me to enter our EIN number and get past the first screen.
Yeah, somebody mentioned that recently. And so this is good to have a person on the call who's doing that. Are you using the hyphen or not using the hyphen in your EIN number?
We'll see what she says. We'll move to the next. Oh, it's pre-filled for you, is what she said.
Oh, if we already have your EIN number, then you would not need to enter it. This is one of the things that we kept hearing from people is like, why do I have to keep putting the same information in over and over again? So any place where I could pull data that we already had in the system over, I've done that. I would say if by some chance your EIN number is wrong, email the provider enrollment email address and let them know that you need to update it.
Right. All right, Holly Davis. The reason I ask is because we give professional development for certain things and we have them put it in under the self-reported.
Yes, and once we have the new system in place where those can get validated, it'll ask, like, you know, I know some programs have the director do monthly staff professional development. Like maybe you have a staff meeting, it's 2 hours and 1 hour is professional development. You would indicate who provided the training. And so if your director, you know, meet those qualifications in licensing rule for providing a training, that would be in there. And then the agenda for what the training was about. And then that would be reviewed. If anyone had any questions, they would ask about it. And then it would get moved over to the validated training.
Right. Next question is from Kelly, and I see that she raised her hand, so I'll read it while I'm unmuting her. Is there a future where all of the employee file contents can live on New Hampshire Connections?
Well, what kind of file information are you looking for?
Your resume, transcripts, any,
Yes,
like
those.
I have
Oh,
multiple
you want
sites.
access, right?
Well, it's not that I need access, but when the licenser comes, I have multiple sites. So it's
Yeah.
so stressful because we have an office that's not where our sites are. So it's not great for me.
And I believe, and I would have to check their permission levels in licensing. I believe they could go in and look at that, but I'm not sure.
But like, where would we put it?
Well, in the registry, that very first tile on the top left, the professional registry, there is a place to upload your transcripts. There might not be for resume. So I'm going to add that as something that can be uploaded.
And first aid and CPR, even if it's self-uploaded by the staff member,
Yep.
the physical form.
That's something that we just added in this week. There is a section where they can upload their CPR and first aid dates and and a copy of the certificate.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and then
So-
that would be on your, as a director, you'd go into the training tile, look at staff roster there, and then click CPR first aid, and you can see all your staff and their dates. Now, they have to go in and put them in.
Well,
So,
yes.
Yeah.
I have one more question. I'm sorry if you
Sure.
did answer this. I was interrupted at one point during your presentation.
Okay.
You said there's very little that needs to be mailed in aside from checks.
Yep.
Does that mean they can now upload the household and form?
That is all completed online. So the only household and personnel form has to be mailed in is if the staff person is under the age of 18.
Okay,
So the reason for that is because that household and personnel form needs to be notarized, saying that you give us permission, that you are who you say you are, and you understand we're going to check you out on the New Hampshire Abuse and Neglect Registry. But once you've filled it out online, you're giving us that permission. So the department will check you on the abuse and neglect registry, but only after you've done your fingerprinting, because when you've done your fingerprinting, you've proven who you are.
okay,
So so that takes the place of the required notary, right? The notary part
Yep.
is a requirement in the DCYF law, and it's their registry. So we worked with their lawyers to determine that we didn't have to have those mailed in for people who are over 18, because they're getting fingerprinted and they're proving their identity at that time.
so you don't need their signature anymore
Nope.
on the, okay. And when they get fingerprinted, if it's not through one of the sites that you can make an appointment with, because we're in New London and they have
Yeah.
live scan here, so we utilize that because it's easier.
Yep.
They give us a form. We
Yep.
upload that. We don't have to
No,
mail
that
that
I
in.
believe has to be mailed in, but they are doing some tweaks to the background record check process, and I will mention that the upload the live scan form.
Also, will there ever
No.
be, I'm sorry that I'm hogging so much time.
No,
I'll be, this
okay,
is my
these are
last one.
great, but this is good feedback too. Yeah.
Will there ever be a way to pay online for the background check and the cards?
So the background check, you pay through state police. That's not money that ever comes to licensing. So even back in the day, you used to write a check to state police and send it to us, and then we would send it to state police. And we are looking into online payment.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. And then last question here is from Miriam Barter. She is asking, how are providers who do not have internet connections or those who do not speak English as a first language using this system?
The system is translatable, so it meets the requirements. There's like, you can click for having the site translated.
Okay.
And then internet, I don't know. I mean, I guess,
I know
you have to
there's
go to the library or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's some digital equity work being done behind the scenes here in New Hampshire. So
Yeah.
Eventually. But okay. Well, we are at time.
Yeah.
So thank you all very much for your participation today. Thank you, Terry, very much for all of that information.
All right.
And we look forward to seeing you all again.
Thank you.
And actually, I'm going to drop an evaluation in the Q&A if you're able to stay on and just take it. That would be really great for us to be able to have that information. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're looking to do those through NHCIS too, and have reminders sent to people, and
Wonderful.
yeah.
That would be great. Actually, I think it's disabled for me. So we're just going to send it an email and you can all take it then. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.